Hi, my name's Lauren Epstein, and you're listening to The Lauren Epstein Show. Welcome to another episode where we talk about jobs and careers. Today, I have some very special guests. But before I introduce them, I want to talk to you about what we've all been through, which is the resume submittal process. How many times have you submitted your resume on a website to not hear anything back? I think that's a common experience in this country. And it really is bothersome because it feels like, what's the point? What's the point of spending 5 or 10 or 20 minutes on some of these online applications when you don't know what's going on? And so that's really the kind of the thing that we're going to talk about. I have some amazing experts who are talent acquisition experts. We're going to open up the black box of recruiting to see kind of what's inside, what happens to your resume. And also, we're going to talk about some strategies that you can use. We've talked about this before on the show, but get a different take on what you can do to improve your chances of getting the job. And so you understand. And, before the show started, I was talking with my guests and we were thinking, well, maybe some of these changes need to be on the company side. Some of them need to be on the candidate side. So let's get going. First, I want to introduce my guests. They are absolutely awesome. And I want to say thank you for the amazing gifts. So my guests today are Megan Joseph. Megan is a talent acquisition specialist with Volkswagen Group of America, and she supports the recruiting activity for Audi, Lamborghini, Bentley, and Bugatti, which I had no idea that they're like part of the VW brand. She has been part of a special project centered on talent acquisition initiatives. Prior, Megan worked at Fannie Mae. Megan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Very excited to be here.
And also, we have Toni Buchanan. Toni is a talent acquisition leader at Volkswagen Group of America, and for the past 4 years, she has been responsible for the hiring efforts of several brands, including Volkswagen, Audi, Lamborghini, Bentley, and Bugatti. Thank you for coming to the show, Toni.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, I want to just say they gave me a hat. They gave Afote and I a hat. How do we like our hats?
I love it.
How does this hat look on me?
Looks cool, man.
It
looks
cool, right?
great.
They look fantastic.
Yeah.
Very stylish.
So now and it says
TTRS.
TTRS, which means?
That's one of our Audi brands.
Oh, the TT,
it's one of the
Audi
models.
TT.
Yes.
Oh, so I'm wearing a hat for the Audi TT.
Yes, and on the back you have the Audi rings.
And I got the Audi rings.
Yes.
And I also got, I said, they're saying, here's a gift. I said, is there a Volkswagen inside? And they're like, yes. And there was. There's like a little model, like a Corgi Matchbox type car, but a bigger size. And we got a pen and a pad and some other stuff. So thanks for the gifts.
Our pleasure.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
So, I wanted to kind of start off by talking about if somebody were to apply to VW, and you get a lot of applications.
Mm-hmm.
How many people apply to VW a year in the United States?
Thousands and thousands.
5,000, 10,000?
More than that.
100,000 maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot.
A lot.
So people that are listening to the show probably applied.
The chances
Possibly,
are.
very
Yeah.
possibly.
I mean, there's
yes.
like 3 people listening, so at least
Okay.
one of them has.
Hopefully they've all applied.
Yes.
And they might wonder, well, what happens to my resume? So first, we're going to talk about the VW process. So if you could kind of walk us through. And by the way, my guest told me some really good news. VW America won the Candidate Experience Awards.
Yes.
And we did it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very
That's very
much.
cool.
Yes.
I'm jealous.
Very cool.
I'm totally excited for you. So the Candidate Experience Awards, for the folks who are listening but don't know what that is an organization started about 6 years ago called the Candidate Experience Awards, where companies will send out a survey to anyone who applies, and you can give feedback on your interview and the whole process of being a candidate.
Correct.
That feedback, without your name, comes back to the company, so they get the feedback, and hopefully they improve. But also, the ones who do the best win awards. And this team won an award, so it's great. And it's a nonprofit. We've had the folks from the Candy on before. We had Eileen from KPMG and also Ellen from the award. So I'm very excited for you.
Thank you.
That's great. That's good for you. So let's talk about your process. So tell me what happens when somebody applies. And either one, feel free.
Sure. So I think every talent acquisition organization has some type of process that they want to follow, and a general rule of thumb in how they review employees and circle back with candidates. For us at Volkswagen and the brands, the team will review applicants that come through the portal, review candidates that apply, and then they'll make a decision as to whether or not they meet the requirements of the job. And from there, they may reach out to the individuals for more information, share the resume with the hiring manager, set up subsequent interviews. If the individual does not meet the requirements or is not selected to move forward at any point, then they'll be notified that they haven't been selected. So that's our general practice.
So let's break that down a bit. So I go to your website and I see a position I'm interested in and I hit the apply button. And then what happens?
From there, once the individual completes the application.
Okay, so I see an application. Is it like a big application thing where you ask me lots of questions? Or is it one button apply?
It is
Somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Somewhere in between.
So we have tried to streamline the process.
Sure.
Because we understand there are dropout rates.
Yeah.
So we have tried to streamline it. We're not one touch, one button, apply. There is
So let me ask you about
more.
that.
Yeah.
Because I think people want to know, like, why do you collect all that other information if everything's on my resume?
Oh, you
So
mean
what's the other
questions up
Yeah, the
front?
questions. Like, so sometimes they're asking, like, your name, your address, all of your job history in the online application. Do you guys do that?
we do, yes.
So why is it that you collect the job application history in your computer system when it's on my resume?
So I think that there could be a couple different reasons for that. Depending on the format in which someone uploads their resume, because as part of the application process, you can upload your resume, cover letter, any other supporting documents. It may not be clear to the recruiter when they're reviewing applications. The format may not come through as clear. If you upload a PDF, that looks different than a Word document. So I think that one of the reasons that companies may ask candidates to enter that information is because it helps when reviewing backgrounds. It makes it a little bit more easier for the team to go through and see where someone is currently employed and their career history.
So when I upload my resume or in a PDF format or a Word document, so the recruiter doesn't actually see that document?
It is attached, but depending on how the recruiter reviews the information, it could be there. It may be a little bit further down on the application.
So the recruiter is thinking like, okay, everyone submits their application, and normally they'll put in all of their career history in some format that I can read it. But if they don't see that, then they may go down to the resume.
Exactly.
Okay, because I know when I apply, I'm like, I don't really want to do this, and I kind of, do as little as possible and just get it in. That's just kind of, and I'm wondering if people are thinking like, do I have to do all these things? And I think depending on the person's style, they may be like, I am going to put everything into this, and they don't have a problem with that. And some people like me are like,
And you bring up a good point. We use the resume to forward it on to the interview team and the hiring manager. So it is good to have that format. Well, we're trying to screen in rather than, I'll say, screen out. I screen in candidates who may be qualified. Any additional information is helpful.
Sure.
Which is why we do ask some questions up front.
Right. I mean, there's different kinds of information that gets collected, and I don't know your process, but sometimes they'll ask questions like, have you done this? And that's good to know. Like, I'm fine with answering those. It's the ones that I'm like, it's on my resume, I think. I don't, I may not want to be repetitive and ask.
Right.
So the recruiter really is the first person who sees it in your organization.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, and the recruiter should have a lot of experience in the job. They know what the job is, right? And then they've seen like a ton of resumes, so they know what your resume looks like relative. And they're looking for something, right? What are they looking for?
So for me, I look for transferable skills. Within our organization, the recruiters do have kickoff meetings with the hiring manager where they will learn from the hiring manager exactly the type of experience that's required for the role, specific software skills that the individual needs to have, or years of experience. So that's what we're looking for on resumes when we're doing a first pass.
And that kickoff meeting, and the one thing I forgot to tell you ladies, the only thing I do sometimes is I interrupt, so forgive me. But so the kickoff meeting is a meeting between the recruiter and some form of the hiring team where they talk about this job. So that the recruiter kind of understands the job and understands kind of like the ultimate candidate and the acceptable candidate and everything in between. Is that right?
Exactly, yes.
So go on. So they have this. They understand what they're looking for.
Yes. So we'll have kind of the top 3 to 5 things that we're really looking for on resumes. Like I said, years of experience, any software, industry experience. A lot of times is something that can be important too. And then we'll go through the process of determining whether or not the applicant has that experience or not, and kind of start to whittle down the pool from there.
So, a lot of times hiring managers, in my experience of recruiting, they want 20 things that are just impossible to find. Do you ever have that experience?
Absolutely, sure.
And so what do you do when that happens?
So in those situations, we will talk to our hiring managers and educate them on what the candidate landscape may look like for that. For in some cases, they could be looking for everything in the kitchen sink, and the reality is, there may be 3 individuals out there who meet all of those qualifications. We call that the purple squirrel in the recruiting industry. And so we'll talk to the hiring managers and say, if you really are looking for the individual to have all of these things, this is going to take a very long time. So let's talk about the things that this individual needs to have coming in the door and what you're willing to train on. And from there, hopefully, we're able to lessen up those requirements a little bit.
So will you do market surveys?
We have some intel. I mean, our recruiters come from a variety of backgrounds, and so they know themselves about what the candidate slates may look like. We're always educating ourselves through different seminars and webinars.
We have tools
to learn
that we
more.
use.
Yes.
So,
And
go ahead.
and I also wanted to say that our recruiters are trained as consultants and partners to the hiring managers and the interview teams. And that's what, through a series of discussions and roundtables, that's what the hiring manager wants. And, that's absolutely the model that we use. So they're trusted advisors, and they're able to share that information. So it doesn't happen often. I mean, it's our role to educate them on what is going on outside the market.
Right. Now, you're a large organization. You have professional recruiters. A lot of companies that folks send their resumes into, the resume goes into like some executive, and they're just collecting resumes. And often, you need to know that. Like, there may not be a recruiter in the organization, but if there is one, then they're actually processing it. They're looking at it, and they're thinking, can this person, do some level of the job? How many of the resumes that come in, how many of them get a call from a recruiter? Because I think most people, and I want to just say, most people just talk to me, because I maybe don't write a good resume, but give me 5 minutes on the phone and I can kind of fill in the blanks, and maybe I am a good person. Or if I'm not, getting that phone call feels good.
That's a great question, and it's I may give a general response because it may vary depending on the role, the number of applicants that we get, and also the number of positions that we're working on at any given time.
Now, I'm going to say, that's really important, listeners. So remember, the recruiter is working, right? So they may not have the 5 minutes to give you a call if they have 40 positions and they're just trying to kind of get through everything. So you may have to look better on paper
True.
to get a call. Right. We've done some shows on how to make your resume look good. And this is the reason why you make your resume look right to the job, because the recruiter only has a few moments to look at it.
Absolutely.
And this is the reason. It's not because they don't want to. It's because they are just inundated with work.
Yes. I will say that I got my start in the staffing agency. And we were trained that you're not just recruiting on the job that you're working on, you're recruiting on skill sets. So I kind of keep that in the back of my mind when I'm reviewing resumes, even if I don't have a lot of time to give all of the qualified candidates a call, which unfortunately, usually I don't. I always want to save their resumes for future opportunities, or maybe let them know, hey, this role isn't going to work out, but I'd love to talk to you about what we may have in the future, because I know that their background would be something that could be a match in the future.
And we're going to come back and talk about that in a second. We'll take a quick break, but people should know that the notion of keeping your resume is actually much more valuable now. It's much more plausible that you will get a job from a resume that's kept now because of the technology, because of the advances in our field. So we'll talk more about that in a second. We're going to take a break. You've been listening to The Lauren Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein, here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia, and we'll be back in just a minute. Hi, I'm Lauren Epstein, and you're listening to The Lauren Epstein Show, where we talk about jobs, careers, and the workplace, here on 96.7 FM. If you're interested in being on the show, you can give me a call at 240-876-0276 or email me at Lorne, Lorne, at electriccow.com. You can check out our Facebook page, which is Lauren Epstein, and also our Mixcloud account. So if you go to mixcloud.com, Lauren Epstein, you'll find our shows. Thanks so much. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to The Lauren Epstein Show. And today we're talking about opening up the black box of the recruiting process. With me, I have Megan Joseph and Toni Buchanan from Volkswagen. And we were about to get into the whole notion of, hey, I don't have a job for you now, but I'm going to keep you. Tell me what that means for you.
Sure. So as I was saying, I started my career in the staffing industry where we were taught to recruit on skill sets. So always, thinking, when could this person be a match for a role that we may have in the future? So although we all have limited time in our days now, and as a corporate recruiter, the role is a little bit different than it is on the staffing side. When I'm reviewing resumes, I always want to think about, okay, this person isn't a match for this specific role that I have right now, but I want to put their resume aside and perhaps reach out to them and learn about what they're looking for and keep in touch with them about opportunities in the future.
So something that's changed in our technology is that we used to have very unsophisticated databases or no databases. Resumes were just paper. Now we have these applicant tracking systems that are very sophisticated. And if you apply, I, as the recruiter, can make some notations on your profile that this person might be good for later. And I can kind of set that up so that if I do a search again, I'll do a search in my applicant tracking system, you may very well come up, which is, I think now that we're filling up our ATSs with good qualified people, that's going to be something that you'll see more, I think, for applicants. What would you say about that, Toni?
I agree. It's something where recruiters are trained to go into the applicant tracking system and do searches. So we can do external searches and sourcing, but we also have that huge pool that is a great resource for us to start when we have a position.
Sure. I mean, the person that applied 4 years ago who had 1 year of experience now has 5 years of experience and might have all the skills that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So then what happens once the recruiter has looked at the resume? Now the call, right? If they meet those. So then what's in the recruiter's mind? What are they looking for
when we make the call?
Yeah.
So we usually set aside maybe 15, 20 minutes to talk to candidates and learn a little bit about their resume. For me personally, I always say, yes, you put all this on a resume, maybe you write a cover letter, but for me, the call is really important because it really brings the resume to life. And I want to learn a little bit more about specific instances that they've had and how they can pertain to the things that we're hiring for the job. So, I'll usually do a brief introduction, set up what the call will look like, and then I'll ask them to walk me through their work history in however format they want to, from beginning to end to beginning, but just so I can learn a little bit about their history and how they've made moves throughout their career. We talk to candidates all day, every day. So through that, I'm able to gather a little bit of information from them about how they've made moves and some of the things that they've done. And then I'll probably ask one or two specific questions about their technical background as it relates to what I'm recruiting for.
So Megan said something really interesting. So you've been recruiting for a while. And if you hear a candidate talking about their resume, it's really easy to validate it. So one of the things that I don't think you said is that what I listen for as a recruiter is how you talk. Are you clear? Are you confident? Are you talking like someone who believes what they're saying is true? And do you have the communication skills to do the job, right? If I ask you a question about a piece of software that you used, are you answering it intelligently, right? I know you may not know everything, but in the interview process, that's part of what I'm doing. If I do go through their resume, and I may ask them, whatever questions I ask, I'm listening how they answer.
Right. Like, tell me more about that, or how have you used PowerPoint?
Right.
Where have you really utilized Excel, things like that. And you can start to determine patterns in asking those questions to every candidate you speak with, and learn, really what is validated and what is not.
And so what we're trying to do, and tell me what you think about this, what we're trying to do as recruiters at that point is just to make sure that the resume, the person on the phone, and the job have some alignment, right? We don't know 100%, right? Because we don't know the technology. We're not interviewing them for that. But we think, okay, this person, if I put them in front of my hiring manager, this is what they're thinking. If I put them in front of my hiring manager, they're not going to yell at me.
Right.
They're going to be like, okay, that was definitely worth interviewing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely worth interviewing, right? So, and we know that they may have to interview 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. Who knows?
Exactly.
So you've got to be, if you're getting to that point, then you're definitely worth interviewing. That's good feedback for somebody to know, right? If they've gotten to that point. So then what happens in the process after you've talked to them and you've had that conversation?
So
what actually do you email the hiring manager? How do you communicate with them, and what do you communicate?
So again, I don't want to generalize for all recruiters, but I think as a general practice at Volkswagen, we will send the top candidates over to the hiring manager. I think one of the things to keep in mind, and sometimes this can be hard for candidates to understand too, we may have maybe 15, 20 candidates that meet the qualifications, but there's only one job. So even though someone may meet all of the qualifications, may speak with a recruiter, may get sent over to the hiring manager, they still not be selected to interview just because of the slate of candidates that we're looking at.
So yeah, let's talk about that a bit. So do you send all 15 over to the hiring manager?
I will level set with the hiring manager in that pre-meeting that we have.
How many do they want?
How many do they want?
Yeah. So the hiring manager is going to say, just send me 5 or some number. They probably won't say 20, right?
Sometimes they do, but sometimes they want to say all. But
that's right.
But our job as the recruiter
right.
is what we say is to send them the top candidates. That could be 10, that could be 15.
Agreed. We don't talk numbers like that with the hiring managers.
Right.
We are trusted partners with them. They know that we are going to show them who's qualified. If it happens to be 15 candidates that we feel strongly about, I mean, we make sure that there's awareness and so they see the whole picture. One
of the things I think listeners need to know is that recruiters today, and I think professional recruiters today, do understand the job. That is one of their superpowers.
Correct.
They are able to see you in that job or not in that job. And they may not be able to put the finer points on can you program this way or that way, but we know. We just know. Yes? I mean, we've just seen so many.
Yes.
And so if you don't get selected, it really is because you're probably not a fit because we've been doing it such a long time. So whatever the number is, and I know I've had managers just send me everything.
Right. The dreaded send me everything.
Send me everything. Yeah. And, and then you're kind of okay, well, I think I'm only going to send them the best.
But right. That's where we educate our hiring managers and tell them why they don't need to see every candidate.
So what would you say, typically to a hiring manager about why we're not going to send you everything?
Because some candidates may not meet any of the skill sets that they're looking for. So we're trained. It's our job to screen for those skills and pass them on to the hiring manager. The hiring manager has another job to do. But there's a balance because recruiting isn't just the role of the recruiter now. It really is the role on some level of everybody in the organization.
I say that recruiting is a team sport.
Right? So it's a balance because we don't expect a hiring manager. We expect them to do some of the work, to be a subject matter expert. If they are at an event and they meet somebody, how they're educated as to how they need to bring them to us, get them in the system. So,
yeah,
it's
they're part of the process.
So it's an education. If somebody comes to us and says, "I want access, I want to do everything," and that happens rarely in organizations I've worked in because we educate them, we partner with them.
Yeah.
So
I think it's also changed. I mean, I've been doing this a little over 20 years, and I think in the beginning, managers just kind of like, just send me all the resumes. I don't want you to screen out for anything. Maybe they had bad experiences with recruiters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we as a profession are getting better.
Yeah.
Right? We're not as old in some other professions where you can kind of count on a recruiter being as equally qualified as in other work.
And I will say, I did have an example once where I had someone who did want to see all of the resumes, and I had said, well, some of them are not qualified, and the response was, well, I'd be interested in seeing some of the unqualified ones just to see how unqualified they are. So I sent over some of those, and the individual said, you're right, they aren't a fit. And from there, I think that we were able to have an understanding.
Right.
And go from there.
And that's what candidates should understand. The relationship between the recruiter and the hiring manager is built on trust. Mm-hmm. It's purely built on trust. If the recruiter is doing the right thing for the hiring manager, they're going to trust them more and feel more comfortable. And they're, like, as you say, now they're consultative to the hiring manager and not just utility. Mm-hmm. So now you've sent over some folks that you think are good. Do you tell them that do you tell the people that you've sent over that you're sending them over, and do you tell the people you're not that you haven't?
Ooh. So I do tell people when their resumes are sent over. I want to be clear on that. And
you give them a call or by email?
It depends.
I think it varies.
But either way.
Yeah. If I'm not sending them over, if I've talked to them, again, it can vary, but I will say, we've decided to move forward with another slate of candidates for this position. I think that the key thing is, our goal is to let individuals know when they're not selected to move forward, that we've made that decision. Like I said, that's our general practice and what we strive to do.
And one of my experiences has been is that if I have, say, 10 qualified candidates, I may take my top 3 or 4, send them to the hiring manager, see what they say. Mm-hmm. If they don't like those, then I'll pass on some more from that 10, still kind of keeping them all like in the loop, and then see what happens. Mm-hmm. And they may say, okay, we want to interview that next 3. But I don't know if they're going to hire one, so I'll keep the rest of the 10, the remaining 4, to see what happens. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of one of the strategies that I have to use because I really don't know who sometimes is actually going to fit. Mm-hmm. And candidates need to know that if they don't hear anything back that's negative, they could very well still be in the process.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
But what I try to do is like those 10 is I'll call them. I mean, I'm a big caller. I grew up in the agency world like you, and I can dial, it's not a problem. Mm-hmm. I know when we were at the where we met was at this event for the Candidate Experience Awards.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And afterwards, all of the leaders were talking about, and we're all experienced, and we're saying how the younger recruiters, the young recruiters, don't like to call as much. They'd rather text and do stuff like that. So people may be running into recruiters who are millennials who don't necessarily pick up the phone. So maybe providing other ways to communicate, like texting, like emailing, just texting. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So making sure that you as a candidate know it's not bad or good if you don't necessarily hear anything. Right. But it's also, and I think, a reflection on the organization as to how well you get through that process.
Yes.
So I'm just kind of putting a pin in what we talked about before. You guys just won this award. So clearly, more people think that you have done a great job at the experience of being a candidate than other companies.
Right.
And that being on notice, it's like you're making yourselves better. You had said to me earlier that the recruiters are getting the feedback.
Right. We've opened ourselves up. And I think so as we were, this was our second year applying for the Candy Awards. The first year we needed a baseline. We were hopeful it would be a great thing if we won, but we really needed that data because we needed to understand where these pain points were for us and candidates. And it's all about if you really focus on candidate experience, that was the aha for me because there's so many parts to talent acquisition, right? It's in the last 10 years, it's just evolved
Sure.
and become more complex. But in my mind, if you keep it about the candidate, whether it's internal or external, everything else can fall into place. So how we communicate with them, even if in the beginning to just be more transparent and have even if it's a quick email saying we received your resume, we'll be reviewing it. So it might not always be a call we like to call. We try to put time on our calendars to make sure that we do take care of them and make them a priority. But it may not just be calling. You're right. It may
Right.
be a personalized email, something generated to just say, hang in there. We received your resume. We're reviewing it.
One of the things I did a Smart Recruiters implementation, well, several times, but one of the times we baked in automatic email responses.
Mm-hmm.
When the system moved them on to the next step, they automatically got an email, so they knew where they were in the process, and they can go to their page and they can see they're in one of 3 steps.
Right.
So there's communication going on, which is
Right.
really important. We're going to talk more about that in a second. We're going to take another break. So my name's Lauren Epstein. I am your host today on the Lauren Epstein Show. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to the Lauren Epstein Show. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. Today, we are talking about the black box of recruiting with my guests, Megan Joseph and Toni Buchanan from Volkswagen. So, the communication piece,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's something that we're always I think we like people. Mm-hmm. We'd like to communicate more. And candidates should know what? We do, and we just don't have the time. We make time.
So on our end, we're dealing with volume. And I think a lot of organizations are dealing with volume, and this is a huge topic to talk about because how do you communicate? It's on everybody's radar. How do we do that? How do we not let people slip through the cracks? So we do it at different phases. Communication to us, as we were talking about before, isn't just picking up the phone and calling them. It could be an automated email to let them know where they're at, a quick email to say, we know you're waiting, don't have any feedback for you yet, should be in touch with the hiring manager sometime next week, even if it's just a quick note like that. That makes a difference.
So what would you tell candidates? I mean, we've talked about a bit of the process. I'd like you can talk right into their ears. Let them know what you think and what they should know about the process so far, where we've gotten.
So just to tag on to what Toni said, communication is very important, and but I also think it is a two-way street. So when I'm working with candidates through the process, I usually let them know, hey, my goal is to get back to you by this date. If you haven't heard from me, check in, send me an email. I say email because usually that's the best way to reach me after the initial phone call, and see what the status is if you haven't heard anything, because it is important for the candidate and recruiter relationship to grow, as well as the recruiter hiring manager, which we talked about earlier.
That's a great point. We want to have that relationship with the candidate as well. So I do the same thing.
So you let people know, hey, call me, email me.
Absolutely, and we want to hear from them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's actually, I have to say, given the proportion of resumes I would get in a day or a month or a year, I get a very few people actually call me or email and get back to me. And I never understand that. When I always make the invitation, I put it in my emails. Why do you think that is?
That people don't reach back out?
Yeah.
I think that they may be afraid sometimes if they haven't heard from me, and I say feel free to check back in with me. Maybe some candidates aren't as open to reaching out to me directly, so that could be why.
So candidates, don't be afraid. it's okay, call or email?
Yes. Because I mean that is one of the things as we're looking at this data through the Candy Awards as to we never heard back. I would want an opportunity to say, well, tell me more about what happened and where did you not hear back? Because I mean, if we're talking about numbers, we could be communicating with 100 people in any given week, and while we do want to do our best to have that personalized email or call back saying, hey, still waiting, or hey, we moved on with someone else. If they reach out to me too, that's another reminder to me that I need to follow back up with them, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think I think listeners should know we're still maturing in this industry, and the industry in a business where it's like our job is to bring in the right talent as quickly and as easily as possible. And something you mentioned earlier, I want to talk about is process. Mm-hmm. And you said, over the last 10 years, the process has gotten more complex. There are more pieces to it. There is the pre-interview part, the interview part, the
social media.
Social media
didn't exist 10 years, 15 years ago the way it does today.
And we're dealing with this. Mm-hmm. So we're just kind of, I think a lot of us are just kind of keeping our heads above water to get it working right. At least that's what I would tell folks. We're still working on it. It's a work in progress. Given that we have a Candidate Experience Award that's only 6 years old, clearly this is a growing interest by companies, and people in our profession want to do good. So let's go to the next process, because after this, what I want to talk about is some of the outliers, like the people kind of skirting around the process.
Yes.
So, but let's finish this up. So then the interview happens. What should the candidate know? Like, how does that work? As far as, are you going to tell me when, how, what should I be expecting?
Absolutely. When we interview someone, we give them all the information we can. We prep them on who they're going to be meeting with, what their background is, what to expect. A lot of thought goes into the actual interview schedule. Megan,
Yeah, and I think another thing that we try to provide them with information on is, what is the format of the interview going to be like? Are they going to be technical skills, behavioral style questions, which is something that we try to do a lot of at Volkswagen. So just to give them a little bit of information to prep, but at the same time, we don't want to give them the answers to the test, right? So we give them enough information where they can prepare, and then it is up to them to put their best foot forward in the interview.
Yeah, I would agree. In the emails I would send to my candidates, I'd say, hey, look, do your best job, do as much research as possible, and here's who you're going to be talking to. Come prepared, right? Giving them that invitation of, we would like you to do homework for the interview. Whenever I go to an interview, I do a lot of homework. I actually make like a little book with questions. I have like 20 questions that I've already prepared, and they're not surface questions. They're kind of under the hood. So I think most recruiters want you to come prepared, which demonstrates your interest, right? Because we want to see how interested you are, and we'll be prepared for you.
Exactly.
Is that fair?
And the information we give is consistent from one candidate to the next. So they have the same information. It's up to them to come in and demonstrate how they qualified they are and get the position. So we see all that as a recruiter. It's baselines, right? You're dealing with people. You can see who's calling you back. You can see who's done their homework on top of what you've given them. So at this point, what are some of the, before they come to the interview, what are the things that really excite you about somebody? What is it like, oh yeah, this person's really good?
For me, it's if they have a passion for the role that we're talking about. At Volkswagen specifically, and the brands within Volkswagen, I think that because you can see the product on the road, everyone in the organization, regardless of if they're in HR, the sales team, the technical team, they have passion for the product. So that gets me excited when I talk to someone who is excited about the brand, excited about the role, that gets me excited, and I think that the hiring team too.
So passion is key, right? I mean, you really want to hear someone like, oh, man,
yeah. And
I love this, or I love that, or I've been reading about something that connects them with what's going on.
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And I think that can translate to other companies too, not just Volkswagen, but having some insight into the organization, understand what they're trying to do and understand how it aligns with your goals as a candidate. It's important to make that connection. So specifically at Volkswagen, people are able to do that through the car sometimes, but it could be other things, and at other companies it might be something different. But making that tie is important.
Absolutely.
So now the candidate comes in for an interview, and what's happened is that you've talked to the hiring manager. They've picked some people to interview. They should all have their resume.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to take me to that post-interview room, right? Do you guys have post-interview meetings where the team gets together and talks about a candidate?
We do interview debriefs, yes.
Interview debriefs. Take me in there.
So, Toni, thoughts on that?
Oh, as far as...
Well, what's it like? I mean, I know that my experience has been that's the most interesting part of the interview from my perspective, because everyone kind of has their idea of what the person should be. And what I set up my interviewers to do is actually score them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you do scoring.
We score.
You score so that there's
right.
some kind of empirical thing. It's not just, I felt this way or I felt that way. There's actually something to look at. But then when everyone's talking about it, it's always interesting to see who are the champions for this person and who aren't, and how does that conversation kind of ebb and flow. I think that candidates don't know that if they've impressed the right person, then their chances are much better. But if they've impressed the wrong person, then maybe not. And so what can we tell people about that process? That and I'm happy to talk about it if.
Well, I think that as a recruiter, and we're just trying to make sure that everyone's kind of thinking about it from different standpoints. We talked about earlier in the kickoff meeting where we're determining what are the requirements of the role. The debrief is kind of the same thing.
So you bring them back to that. Your job is kind of remind everyone, hey, this is what we're looking for?
Yes, because sometimes it can go off on different things.
Right.
And other things can come out of the interview debrief that it's like, well, the person didn't have this. Well, the person never needed to have that.
Right.
Or we agreed at the beginning that we were able to train on that. So really, I think our role as talent acquisition is to refocus and making sure that the things that we said were important to the role are still the things that are important to the role, and can the individual bring that to the table, and maybe 3 of them can. So kind of dissecting that and saying all things equal, what is the learning curve going to be for each one of these individuals, and make an educated decision from there.
I found that a candidate will say one sentence, and that'll get stuck in someone's mind as like the most worst thing that they could have said. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with the job, and it was probably taken out of context. And of course, the interviewers don't always take into consideration the fact that the interviewee is nervous, and this isn't something they do professionally.
Yes.
And we as recruiters know, we know you're nervous. We know that this isn't easy, but sometimes managers kind of get hung up on those things. And it's up to us as recruiters, talent acquisition professionals, to kind of get rid of all the stuff. I'll give you an example. One of my experiences was that we had a person come in for a technician level job.
Okay.
They had gotten fired from a position for no good reason. They were accused of stealing something, but they didn't steal it. And actually, I did the research because I was just curious. But they had told the hiring manager that. And so the hiring manager just had that stuck in their head as, this person just told me they stole something, so they're already out. Mm-hmm. They were accused of stealing something, I should say. And even after I went to him and I didn't have enough trust with him for him to be like, okay, yeah, that's what you're saying. But I tried to convince him, this person was accused of that, but when I researched it, that didn't actually happen. Mm-hmm. And that happens. That just happens in interviews, that someone will get hooked on something that you say, which is, why it's important to practice interviewing. It's important to speak, in a way that's going to sell you. But these are things that human beings do.
Mm-hmm. I encourage people when I'm working with my candidates, if I sense they're nervous, that's why I give them information, and we coach them on just keep it about the job. right? And some people may ramble, some additional things may come out when they're nervous, but keep it about the job. And as I train hiring managers, whether it's this organization or a previous organization I've worked at, we train them, keep it about the job.
And what do you do to relax a candidate? What would you tell someone to do?
I think building rapport. I just try to really connect with them and build that rapport and that trust with the candidate as well, because I'm guiding them through the process.
Right.
So, they trust that I'm going to give them valid information, that I'm going to guide them as well as I guide the hiring manager and the interview team.
Yeah, I think good recruiters, and I think you guys you ladies have demonstrated this, is that you care about people.
Absolutely.
You care about the candidate like they're a person.
Absolutely.
And that relationship is important because even, if you don't hire them now, you may hire them later.
Or they may be buying one of our cars,
Exactly.
right? No pressure there. Absolutely. So we encourage, as we talked about before, we encourage that relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We want to stay in touch. We want to be in networking with them as well, because I think one of the great things about our team is, even though somebody may not be a fit for this particular role, we share candidates amongst the brands or pipeline them for future positions. So
So you have systems in place where you'll share candidates.
Absolutely.
And people get hired that way.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's good to know. So do you? If I come and I apply and I'm talking to you, Megan, and I say, well, I love my Volkswagen, or I love riding my Bugatti. How much of an influence is that on the process?
Oh, I mean, people say that all the time.
Oh, they do?
My first car was a Volkswagen or
we don't hear the Bugatti one too much, though.
No.
If your first car was a Bugatti, that's something different. But I mean, I said
people they have the whole motorcycle, Bugatti motorcycles, which are, right? Bugatti has motorcycles? No, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Ducati.
Ducati, which
Bugatti.
is part of our organization as well.
Okay, well,
but yeah.
But you're probably not applying for a job if you own a Bugatti.
To me, it's a great conversation starter and icebreaker. Yeah. It doesn't make a difference,
right?
No, you don't have to be a gearhead to get a job. At our organization.
Do the hiring managers like to hear that? Do the people who are interviewing like to hear your interest in the products?
Well, I think in general, everybody likes to hear that you're interested in their products. Uh-huh. Absolutely.
Sure, yeah, that's important.
And when you can speak to them, do your homework. And here's a candidate tip. We love it when candidates do their homework and they've done research on LinkedIn and they know who the interview team is. They know our products. They can speak to some of the models. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that just shows that you've done your research.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the outliers, those ones that drive us a little crazy. So my name's Lauren Epstein. I'm the host of The Lauren Epstein Show, and we are going to take a quick break. You're listening to 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. We'll be back in a minute. Hi, I'm Lauren Epstein. Every week, I talk about jobs and careers on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia, at 10 a.m. Mondays. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You're listening to The Lauren Epstein Show here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia. With me today, I have my guests, Megan Joseph and Toni Buchanan from Volkswagen. And we are going to talk for the last couple of minutes about those outliers. And the outliers, to me, are the ones where the hiring manager's brother wants a job, and the hiring manager comes to me and says, here's his resume. What do you do about those?
I'm a very process-oriented person. So, for me, these outliers sometimes, can give me some heartburn, but I do my best to bring them into the process. I mean, we love our referrals, and we treat them with the utmost respect. At the same time, we have a consistent hiring process too. So we will bring those referrals into the process, talk to them, review them as we would any other candidate, and continue the process from there. I always like to have these referrals as soon as possible, though, so we can bring them in and be as consistent as possible. Well
said.
And does the company, does your organization, you think, give more preference to referrals, like in the whole hiring process, over people who aren't?
I don't know that I would say more preference, but it is certainly something that we welcome. The whole networking referral process, we
do people in the
that.
process down the stream know that this person was referred? Like if it's like if I work at the company and I refer somebody, I'm not in that position. Does everyone else know kind of like, hey, Lauren referred this person for that position someplace else?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I would say that it came through a referral channel.
So I'm just going to say, because we had Jerry Crispin on the show, he said you are 300% more likely to get an interview if you're a referral. And unfortunately, we're kind of running out of time, but one of the things I wanted to get your sense on is that I encourage people to find somebody at the organization that you can connect with to make you a referral.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And we prepare everybody internally to expect that, to create that environment.
Yeah.
Because it is important.
Yeah. One thing that I think is important, if you're looking to get into an organization or an industry that you don't have a background in specifically, I think that those referrals are great. Networking through professional organizations, finding a champion within an organization, because that will really help you have that introduction to the recruiting team and come into the process if you know someone within the organization and have that warm relationship.
Yeah, and that's just human, right? I mean, we trust people who we trust people who give us people that we trust.
Absolutely.
That is part of human nature. We can't get around that. So, in the last couple of minutes, any parting comments any advice you want to give to folks applying to VW?
Oh, I would say just I'm a strong believer in just go for it. Do your homework. Network with people. Use every avenue you can.
And what does homework to you look like?
Homework is understanding the organization and what it looks like, and who the subject matter experts are, whether it's through social media or meetup events where you might be able to go to understand more and connect with people.
Awesome. That's great advice. And Megan, do you have any last advice?
My parting words would be, know that our goal is to provide you with some type of resolution as to what the status of your application is. So be patient with us as we work through the process. We want to be back in touch with you. Our goal is to be as open as possible. So just know that on the recruiting side, that is our goal.
Great, awesome. And how can folks reach out to you if they want to? Megan, how can folks get a hold of you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Megan Joseph. My maiden name is Anguish, so sometimes you'll see me under Megan Anguish, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to chat with you more.
Awesome. And Toni, how can
I'm
folks...
on LinkedIn as well, Toni Buchanan. And that's probably the best way, or email Toni with an i.buchanan@vw.com.
Awesome. I want to thank you both so much for coming, for bringing great presents and talking to us about your process.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks very much.
Such a big topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm your host, Lauren Epstein. You've been listening to another episode of The Lauren Epstein Show. We'll see you next week here on 96.7 FM, Arlington, Virginia.